opponent, okay, Aintrazi, he is running Turboland. Now, Turboland is a list that is so rarely seen. If you are old school, and you're talking extended old school, you might remember this Zvi Mauschwitz creation. Basically what Turboland does is it lays Horn of Greed into play. Horn of Greed is an artifact for 3 mana that anytime any player puts a land into play, they can draw a card. And then what it does is it plays cards like Exploration, which I see he has here in the form of Azusa, Lost but Seeking, and 4 Explorations, so that you can play multiple land a turn, and then at a certain point, usually very rapidly, you can run various Time Walk variants, whether it's Time Warp, whether it's Walk the Ages, and you can basically take every single turn, so that your opponent just never gets to play again. And you kill eventually with whatever you'd like. You could perhaps kill with a Scrib Sprite. Whatever it is that you want to kill with, you can kill with. And in this case, he is running Meloku. Now, amongst the many cards that he has in here that are kind of exciting, Azusa, Lost but Seeking, Meloku, Constant Mists, which is a green 1 fog that you can buy back by sacrificing land. This is going to be an exciting one to watch. I'm pretty pumped. These players both 2-0, and let's see whether Aintrazi or Pat Cox is going to come out on top. This is a matchup that is actually, it's very, very dangerous for a deck like Aintrazi, because Pat Cox has a ton of cards which can interact with Ali. Deathrite Shaman can break up elements of the combo. Hymn to Turok can stop it before it gets off. Liliana of the Veil can also disrupt it. It's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, if Ali's able to get Meloku going, things could be really crazy for Pat. You see, we're going to shift our playmat there, make sure that perfect. Tell him to stop right there. That's perfect. All right. So turn 1 Deathrite Shaman from Pat.
This is a very great opening for Pat. Perhaps, I think it might be his best opening play in this matchup.
Is it his only 1-drop permanent, I believe so? I mean, he
only
could
has 1-drop.
Thoughtseize.
Thoughtseize is the other one, but I think that turn 1, having a Deathrite Shaman on turn 1 is better than Thoughtseize on turn 1. Ollie's scariest turn 1 play is Exploration. And Exploration, great card and all, but Ollie does not kill on turn 1 or even on turn 2. It's a card that he can literally potentially kill on turn 3. And by kill, what I mean is go off so that the opponent gets no other turns, but that is a very rare and uncommon draw.
So you see a Scalding Tarn from Ali, and I believe we're going to see a turn 1 Exploration into Wasteland to try to choke Pat on mana here. That would be my guess based on the few cards I could see out of Ali's hand. I did see the Exploration, I did see a Wasteland. And there you see the Exploration, and that was 1 land turn, Wasteland, and passes the turn. And Pat says, wait, is that how that works? Okay, guess that's how that works. Exploration, a card that I had a good time with when it was in Standard.
It's a good one.
I played Enchantress in Standard for a while. A very fun deck. It's also a Legacy deck. Evolved quite a bit since then. Deathrite in for 1, Forest from Pat, and I'm sorry, Deathrite not in for 1, Deathrite removing a land, presumably to add mana.
Yep, got rid of a Wasteland from Aintrazi. Very important because Ali does run Crucible of Worlds.
And able to, yeah, there you see the Exploration. Just a 1-mana green enchantment, rare from Urza's Saga. You may play an additional land each turn. So another Exploration would mean that Ali was able to drop 3 lands a turn.
Now, what that card is there, I believe, is Oboro, yes. Palace of the Clouds, or in the Clouds. Taps for a blue mana, where you can spend a mana to return it to your hand.
Yes.
Pat fetches.
Yeah, there you see Oboro. Oh, you saw it for a second. It's basically a legendary island, and yeah, you can pay 1 colorless to return it to your hand. See Azusa, Lost but Seeking in Ali's hand. He did Force of Will that Dark Confidant that Pat played on turn 2, but a Hymn to Turok now from Pat could make it real difficult for Ali to get going here once at this point. He may be.
I think we're going to see a counter spell.
Ah, it's actual factual counterspell.
Ollie is running 4 actual factual counterspells.
And that is the Jace versus Chandra counterspell, in case you're wondering what that art is.
I believe I saw a Time Warp drawn. It is a Time Warp. Ollie's hand is now Azusa and Time Warp. Goes with the Azusa. Azusa is a 1/2 that lets you play 2 additional lands a turn. Pat land. He has access to up to 3 mana this turn because of Deathrite Shaman.
So there you see Azusa lost but seeking. She's a 1/2 for 3, and you can play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. So Ollie able to actually drop 4 lands a turn as of right now. The problem, with that plan is he actually needs the 4 lands in his hand first. But I imagine he's got ways to make that happen.
Ouch.
Whew.
The Bloodbraid into Liliana. Liliana almost certainly, well, it could actually go for the discard first. If Ollie has no cards in hand, okay, he goes for the Edict.
Yep, so gets rid of Azusa, Bloodbraid Elf, swings in for 3, and Ollie untaps here. We know he has Time Warp. What does he top deck? A land.
Attack. Kill the Mishra's, with Mishra's Factory, kills Liliana. Lays a land.
Plays that Scalding Tarn there. Very interesting build. Ollie, for those of you who have ever followed the kinds of lists that Ollie plays, Turboland is one of the staples in his repertoire. There you see a Wasteland on the Mistress Factory from Pat Cox. And an attack with the Bloodbraid Elf.
Ollie just sitting here now.
Didn't see what he drew, did you?
No, he did. He looked at it and then he did not reveal it to the camera. We see another card removed by the Deathrite Shaman, cutting that clock short, getting cards out of Ollie's deck. This actually does matter because one of the things that will happen with Ollie is that he will end up essentially being able to play cards out of his graveyard. In this case, it looks like he only has Crucible to make that work.
So Thoughtseize from Pat sees Time Warp and Upheaval. And even Pat wants to read Upheaval. How does that work again? I imagine that he isn't completely unfamiliar with the card, but that was a standard staple back in 2002.
There's an Upheaval.
Psychotog decks. You can see it's a 6-mana sorcery. Return all permanents to their owner's hands. What was crazy about that was its interaction with Psychotog.
Pat Cox now in a commanding position. Ollie needs a lot to go his way in order to be able to come back into this game. Now, a lot being Horn of Greed plus good spells. He's only got a very short window here where he can possibly win.
Yeah, you see Pat took the Time Warp with the Thoughtseize and now removes it with the Deathrite Shaman to do a little bit more damage. So Ollie is left with Upheaval and I believe one more card? No, or is it just the Upheaval?
He goes for a block, trying to stem the bleeding here.
So Mistress Factory in front of the Bloodbraid Elf and a Tarmogoyf from Pat Cox.
I think I just saw a Horn of Greed, but I could be wrong. It's going to be too little too late if it is a Horn of Greed.
Well, he is able to do some tricks with the Oboro to draw some cards.
But no, he doesn't have the mana. He's got if it's a Horn of Greed.
Right.
Yeah, there is a Horn of Greed. He has to have the mana to bring it back to his hand and then play it.
Right.
And then he's tapped out and then he's dead.
Maybe one more turn if he had that Horn of Greed earlier, he may have had that in play and been able to maybe do something. But still, that was going to be a tall order.
Constrained by mana.
Yeah, in his Turboland deck of all things.
Okay, to the sideboard. Now, we did not get to see Ollie's deck work, and this is partly because Pat's deck tore all of the little pieces apart.
Yes, he did. Looking at the sideboard for Ollie, I don't know that there's anything like Windmill Slam, Bring It In. There's a couple that are reasonable. He's got Thrun, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's just a guy. It's more for counterspell decks. He's got some Zern Orbs to maybe gain some life, but Jund is kind of a well-rounded deck. It's not all in on aggro, so it's not like Zern Orb is as effective against that kind of thing. He's got Force of Will, which I don't even know that I'd want to. I might board out my 2 Force of Wills because it's to free him to Torok for them.
Yeah, the card I like in this sideboard is 3 Ground Seal. which he can use to protect his graveyard from Deathrite Shaman, and in fact, just essentially just be a thorn in Pat's side. There's not very much likelihood that Pat has the kind of Maelstrom Pulse-like cards. Jund usually doesn't actually have that kind of card anymore in Legacy, and Pat Cox is no different. He does not have that kind of card. What he does have, though, more Duresses, Hymn the Turok, Nile Spellbomb, Life from the Loam to essentially do more grinding, and he's just basically got a ton more disruption. This is perhaps, if I think about all of the decks of Legacy, this might be Ollie's nightmare.
If you're just joining us, you're just in time to catch Game 2 of Round 3 of the StarCityGames.com Legacy Open Series live from Washington, D.C. I am in the booth with Adrian Sullivan, and I am Joey Pasco. Probably should have said that first. And Jonathan Choi is trying to distract me off camera, so I will ignore him. Watching these two guys sideboard. Round 3 of 9, so it's quite a long ways to go for both of these guys. I believe they're both 2-0. I'm sure Ollie is, so I assume Pat is at this point, also 2-0. Ollie mentioned winning with Upheaval earlier in an earlier round. That game he was losing with Upheaval in his hand, I think. So Jund is kind of a deck that it has been showing up lately in Legacy more and more. I feel like we didn't really see it last week in Indy, but it's become kind of a force in the metagame where it's more and more common to see it. I'd say over the past, what, 6 months maybe?
Maybe even a little bit less, but at least last 5-6 months. I think a part of it is Deathrite Shaman has shown itself to be so valuable that if you just stitch together Deathrite Shaman with some good cards, you've got a deck.
Yeah, that's true. And I think Deathrite Shaman, you also get Abrupt Decay. If you're playing Deathrite Shaman for its, if you're maximizing Deathrite Shaman, you have access to Abrupt Decay, which is really, I mean, if you're playing black-green, you want Abrupt Decay. It is such a well-rounded removal spell. It hits so many things in Legacy. So, just the ideal removal, uncounterable. And so you've got Deathrite Shaman, you've got Abrupt Decay. Now that basically you're like, well, do I want to play another color? Some people go towards the red, they get the Bloodbraid Elves, they get Lightning Bolts. And some people go towards the blue and they have cards, you know, Jace and Delver, Force of Will, Spell Pierce, cards like that. But essentially the black-green elements overlap quite a bit there. The Tarmogoyfs, the Dark Confidants. You get access to Snapcaster if you go the blue way. So, and some people have described Snapcaster as a Bloodbraid Elf. Because a lot of times you're paying 4 mana for a guy and a spell.
Yep, sounds about right. Ollie Aintrazi here on the play.
So a lot of analogs to the bug lists in the Jund list.
Ollie, I think perhaps his highest profile finish was U.S. Nationals a few years back.
Definitely. Yeah, back in, what was it? Was that
2008?
It's more recent than that. I want to say it was 2010.
Was it 2010? Gosh.
I want to say it could have been. I'm almost positive it was 2010. I feel like he won with Blue Black Control, right? I'm pretty sure it was Nationals in Minneapolis, I want to say. We can certainly look that up here with our access to the internet.
Ollie Aintrazi on the play. Turn 1 Exploration available. Also, he's contemplating whether he wants to lay it or not. Oh, that's a Ground Seal, my bad. Deathrite Shaman on turn 1. We're going to see that Ground Seal come into play on turn 2, making Deathrite Shaman's job not all that exciting. Deathrite Shaman essentially becoming a cheap Squire once Ground Seal is in play.
It was 2011, yeah, I was just going to say. I mixed, 2010 was in Minneapolis. 2011 was the one Ollie won.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with what Ground Seal is, that is an enchantment for green and 1 that makes cards in graveyards unable to be targeted.
Ground Seal, I've heard that's a delicacy in some places.
Nice.
There it is.
Boom. Take that, Deathrite Shaman. I'll draw a card.
Yeah, that's what really makes that card kind of worth playing, really. Just draw a card.
Crucible. Ouch. Crucible of Worlds. One of the player-created cards of Magic the Gathering, now in Ali Aintrazi's hand.
And that's something that you guys might be aware of, and you might not. Right now, You Make the Card is happening again. The results, I guess, of the first vote are supposed to be announced Monday, but the Crucible of Worlds there, you see, is one of the previous You Make the Cards, along with Forgotten Ancient and, what was it, Vanish into Mist, I think is what the name of the card was? Okay. Something about vanishing. And is there another one? Is it just those three?
I believe it's just those three.
Yeah.
Dark Confidant comes into play.
Ali with a Wasteland, I believe. Pat wisely playing only basics when he has an option. And there you see the Crucible. And Vanish into Memory? Okay. So I thought it sounded strange.
Dark Confidant says Pyroblast. Pat Cox takes one. And then the regular draw. Dark Confidant, not player designed as in by a group, but single player designed. It's an invitational card that represents Bob Maher for winning the Magic Invitational a few years back, many years back at this point. I believe that was 2004 that he won.
Yeah, and obviously Ravnica came out in 2005.
It's actually a very good likeness of him.
I agree. Ron Spears, the artist on that.
And Pat Cox contemplating whether he wants to get a basic mountain here. The reason to do it, to protect himself from Wasteland. The reason not to do it, with Deathrite Shaman turned off, his mana could be a little bit more precarious.
Just on the attack with both Dark Confidant and Deathrite Shaman.
We see a Tarmogoyf here, maybe another Bob? Tarmogoyf it is. If you look at Pat Cox's side of the board, those are three impressive cards.
And again, those are the cards that overlap with a lot of these bug lists. So really the only difference being kind of the access to something like Lightning Bolt, or do you want access to something like Counterspell?
Land from the graveyard with Crucible of Worlds.
I think Ali's hand is 3 Counterspells.
Unfortunately for him, Pat Cox has a Pyroblast.
Also, unfortunately for him, Pat Cox's threats are all already on the table. And there you see a Bloodstained Mire from Pat. Goes to the yard, gonna fetch up likely another swamp or mountain, but not unless. Oh no, I guess he doesn't have access. Maybe let me take a look at his lands. Oh, you have his list over
Pat
there.
Cox only has those three basics.
Okay, so yeah, no option for him to go for any further basics. That happens a lot in Legacy, where decks run so few or sometimes 0 basic lands, and they're in a position where they'd like just a basic land to protect from Wasteland. They don't have that option. Him to Turok from Pat Cox. Him, I win. The old saying.
Ollie's like, go for it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. It looks like 6 cards or 5? Looks like 6. And there you see Him to Turok. That has several different art.
Land. With Crucible in play, that basically did nothing.
Yeah, that actually was a great hymn for Ali, as far as great hymns can go, you know, when you're the target. But there you see the Howling Wolf version of Him to Turok. There are several other versions of that art. There's one, and I think that's my favorite one. There's also that one, and there's one other one as well that I can think of. Yeah, there's that one. So, Fallen Empires. Hey, why don't we print the same cards with multiple versions of the art?
That didn't go over very well.
It made things pretty confusing, I think, for people. What card is that? Oh, I know that card. I have that card, but I've never seen this art. I guess that happens with promo cards now, but it's just a lot less often. Also, makes the promos seem a lot more special. So Ali with a fetch, and yeah, triple Counterspell and Cryptic Command. I mean,
the Cryptic Command is going to be a big deal. He's now in the position where he at least, what's going to happen here?
He's playing Cryptic Command. He's going to bounce Bob and probably draw a card. We know Pat has that Pyroblast, isn't that right?
Yes.
Does Ali know he has it?
Yes, he has
It was
seen
revealed off of Bob, right? Yeah.
It works. Ooh, what was that? What was that? Horn of Greed. Thank you, Ollie. And now you might get a chance to see what this deck can do.
I hope so. I'd like to see 3 games out of these 2 guys. No exploration effects in play at the moment, so not going to be quite the engine it could be. But
you see a Horn of Greed.
Get things going. So
what does that do? Okay. Well, every time a land comes into play for either player, that player gets to draw a card.
There you go.
It's plays a land, so it's not comes into play.
Right.
It's plays a land. So Ollie gets to draw a card now.
Right, and that's relevant because some things just put lands into play without actually playing them.
He is responding to the triggered draw by fetching. This makes it a little bit less likely that he will draw another land that he does not need. Only getting 1 extra draw from this Horn of Greed right now.
Also keep in mind, fetch lands won't trigger the Horn of Greed. Like they trigger when they're played, but when they search and find a land, it is put into play, so that is not going to trigger the Horn of Greed.
Is that a ground seal again?
It was.
Yeah.
Well, that'll draw him a card if he wants to play it. But
and now Ollie, low life. He's got sorcery and land in graveyards, I believe. Oh, and instant, so it's a 3/4 Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, it's not looking great for Ali, despite the fact that he has the Horn of Greed on the table now. Just not able to really interact too much with Pat. I mean, we saw a Cryptic Command, but beyond that, he's not able to really put up any sort of wall or disruption for what Pat is doing.
Pat knocks him down to 4. Post-combat Dark Confidant?
Yes.
There it is. Counter spell?
Yeah. Ali has Counterspell. We know Pat has that Blast.
Pat lets it resolve. Is it going to be Bolt for the end here? Saving that Time Warp or that Pyroblast for the Time Warp?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he's worried about something bigger than just a Counterspell. And a Mistress Factory.
That's a good one.
Certainly is. He'll at least get to draw a card. He'll get to block a guy, but he needs more than that, I think. Draws another Mistress Factory. Now he needs the exploration effect.
Wonder if he's thinking about wastelanding that bad land. Oh, ground seal.
And draws a Scalding Tarn. Passes the turn. I don't know. I mean, he can live through this turn if Pat cannot provide any more damage sources. Just going to
Thoughtseize. And I think that Ollie's like, sure, I've got 2 counterspells, so you can take one of them, and then 3 land.
So, Thoughtseize resolves, takes a counterspell, leaving Ali with a couple of land and a counterspell. He is going to activate his Mistress Factory here to block and survive the turn here. So we're going to get some Tarmo die on that.
Activates the Mistress Factory.
Going to get in front of the Tarmogoyf, and Deathrite Shaman's going to connect. Pat actually looks like he wanted to respond to the activation. Says, never mind, it works. Mistress Factory chumps the Tarmogoyf.
And then we're going to get the counterspell there. That's the game.
Counterspell, Pyroblast. And Pat Cox takes it 2-0 over Ali Aintrazi's Turbo Land list. Unfortunate, mostly because I wanted to see Turbo Land get going. You know, not really rooting for either player. I wanted to actually see both decks, and we saw very good things out of the Jund list. I imagine we'll see that more today. It's not out of the question that Pat Cox makes it all the way to top 8. He's a good player with a good deck, so I think there's a good chance there for him. Ali, on the other hand, is a good player with a weird deck. So
it might even be good.
It could be good, but we don't know because we haven't gotten to get a good look at it. He was 2-0 going into this round, so that's something.
I mean, I think that last turn he could have played a little differently. If he wastelands the bad land and does not do the ground seal yet, then he would not have died in that position. He would have gone to 3, and Pat would have been able. Pat had already shown he did not have an extra land at that point, so unless he top decked it, then Pat would either be able to Pyroblast or Bolt, but couldn't do